Episode 34, the founder and CEO of the fast-growing toy company Melissa and Doug Bernstein. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Doug Bernstein. Doug is the co-founder and CEO of Melissa and Doug, a several $100 million toy company focused mostly on simple classic toys for children up to 5 years of age. He and his wife Melissa started the company together about 30 years ago. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be chatting with you.
Likewise. Well, I always like to start from the beginning. So what was the genesis for the company? Why children's toys?
Oh, my goodness. This is going to be a test of my memory. You're right. It is 30 years, actually. This month is 30 years. Why children's toys? The reason is because Melissa and I wanted to do something for children. And that's what started this whole thing. It wasn't actually intended to be a business. It kind of turned into one, but the whole idea was that we really wanted to do something good for children. Our entire background was related to children and education. Our families were all educators. My parents, Melissa's parents, Melissa had worked in homeless shelters with children, and I was on Connecticut's Board of Higher Education. So we just knew we wanted to do something good for children.
Did you have your own children at the time?
We didn't. We actually were not married at the time. We started this business when we were dating. So it's good that it worked out. The business and the marriage.
Well, okay. Right. We'll get to the latter because that's it's very interesting that you've had a 3-decade run with your spouse. You know, oftentimes people start companies when they work in an industry, they see a problem, or they have a personal, visceral reaction to something that they're experiencing in their lives. But it sounds like you were attached, if I'm hearing you right, you're attached to the idea of education and doing something for children without actually having that sort of personal, visceral reaction to anything happening because, you didn't have your own family yet.
Well, you're right. Both observations are right. Although we didn't have our own children, it really was because we thought that children and playtime was heading a direction that we did not think was great. And that really was the premise and the origin of our business was to make children's products which encourage them to use their creativity, use their imagination, to be open-ended products for children rather than ones that would simply throw information at them.
So it sounds like the decision was made at the get-go more from the heart than from the head, so to speak.
Entirely. We did not even have our heads in it, I would say. It was entirely what we thought was good for children, so much so that even as we began making our first prototypes and everything, once we finished things, we actually didn't even really know what to do with them. We hadn't given any thought to how we were going to get it out there, how we were going to distribute or anything. We've always been focused primarily on product and on making great products for children and then letting everything flow from there.
So let's talk about the very first product that you ever launched.
So, and I can tell as I'm walking through this that I'm not a good representative for how to start a business because we did it kind of oddly. I would say we more stumbled into it, but I think to your point, I think the interesting thing here is, as you commented, that it was really from the heart. And I do think that probably is a good lesson. We were never trying to do things that we said, oh my goodness, this is a way to make money. And we started in 1988, and when you were sitting there in 1988, there were probably a lot of ways to make money, but one of them would not have been to make an educational wooden puzzle for children. So that's really where we got going was we started with some really interesting wooden puzzles for children, but again, the idea being to get children to interact with them more.
The actual first product you launched was a wooden puzzle?
that was really our first foray into the children's market. And it was a wooden puzzle, and we called it it was actually a textured puzzle. We called it a fuzzy puzzle. And so it was a puzzle that you would not only put back together, but when you would have the pieces out, you could play with them. And there was a sheep and a pig and a cow. And I remember we got a lot of comments. Pigs aren't fuzzy. Well, our pig was a little bit fuzzy, but we had various textures, and you could play with them and interact with them when you're putting it together.
So you put this product together, I assume on a shoestring budget, and then what?
Yes, I think we spent about $3.37 making that one, and we literally went to local sewing stores and textile shops, and we went into New York, into the fabric district, and we got some really interesting textures, and we truly made it the old-fashioned way, cut and sew ourselves, and we made some pieces out of styrofoam rather than wood at the time, it was easier for us to handle, and we truly just made our own first prototypes like that.
And it wasn't driven off of any market research. It wasn't driven off of any, let's test something with a bunch of kids. You just said, this seems interesting. It's missing. Let's just put it together and see where it goes.
Exactly. And honestly, I guess I'm going to alienate the entire industry, but we've never been big believers in market research. From our perspective, market research is more informative as to where things have been rather than where things are going. So we try to use our imaginations. And if we had done market research, I think we probably would have found out, what do you mean you're going to make a puzzle that's fuzzy and a sheep that's, I'm not sure what the results would have been, but we probably wouldn't have made it.
I think you could look at parallels everywhere. I mean, in tech, had they done market research on the need for some type of communication platform that limits itself to 140 characters, I don't think Twitter exists today, right? You could say the same thing with Amazon Prime and 100, 1,000, other areas. So that's interesting.
I think that Henry Ford said that if he had done market research, he would have found out people wanted faster horses.
Right.
So it is funny. It's a frequent discussion, and we talk about it a lot. But we really do consider ourselves a product company, a content company, and everything else flows from that. And it is different from most other companies that are originate and are driven more by either sales or by marketing. We truly are a product company.
Okay, so before we go on, I've got to ask, why Melissa and Doug? Why not Doug and Melissa? Did you pick the short straw or something?
Well, I picked the right straw. Certainly the smarter and the more interesting person got listed first. That's for sure. But then again, I suppose if I had known it was going to work this well, I might have argued a little bit. Might have argued a little bit more. At the beginning, it was like, this is going nowhere. Sure, whatever. We'll call it whatever. So, but no, Melissa is certainly the heart and soul and the more important part of our partnership.
So let's talk about that. What's the recipe, so to speak, for going into business with someone that you've got such an intimate relationship with and making it work?
It's funny when we do get out there and speak with people. It's amazing with all the things that have happened and how the business has grown over the years and everything. We've been places before where we're speaking with large groups and that is always the first, like, wait, you work with your spouse? It's always the item of most interest. And for us, it has been absolutely perfect and absolutely fantastic. I can't say that it would always work, but we have a great way of working together in every sense of the word, not just work, but just collaborating, being together, speaking together, having fun together. We're both very strong people, strong-willed, strong-minded, but very respectful of each other's opinions. We don't agree all the time or even much of the time, but we have healthy discussions about everything, and it has just always worked out really healthily, personally and professionally.
Do the skill sets complement each other to the point where you may defer to her judgment in certain areas and she'll defer to yours in others?
I would say yes, especially over time. I think at the beginning we were both doing everything. We both were doing everything from the idea origination to packing the boxes to labeling the boxes to making the sales calls. And I would say at this point, Melissa is clearly on the creative end of the business, and all of the ideation and the conceptual development is owned by Melissa, and I am more on the business end of the business.
So I'm assuming for a lot of years you were bootstrapping this company, living hand to mouth. Was there any point along the way where you were ready to throw in the towel, where you said, look, we gave it our best shot, enough is enough, let's just call it quits and move on with our lives?
Yes and no. We're definitely not quitters, but there was a time early on, I would say we were just a few years into it, and we got hit with probably our first real 2x4, which we now realize are going to come every few weeks. But we got hit with our first one was when one of the factories that we were partnering with, we had brought all of our ideas to them, and they were making all of our products, and we showed up at one of our industry's biggest trade shows in New York, and across the way from us was our factory. And they had all of our items with, if anything, very modest and minor modifications, and they put little tape over our name, Melissa and Doug, and changed it to their name. And they said, well, we decided that we want to sell without you guys anymore. I know it's all your ideas, but we want to grow in a different way than you do. And we want to, so we're going to do that. That was a big wake up call, about choosing partners carefully in life. And it was a pretty sobering moment. And at about that time, we did have that thought, and we were very comfortable with it. We were excited. We were going to go back to education, and we were going to go back, and I would pursue being a dean or work at a university or something. And Melissa would go back to either teaching or working with homeless children. And we decided, now let's stay in this thing, and let's see if we can put this together back the right way.
Did you fight back in any way? Did you sue them? Did you do a cease and desist?
We didn't. We've never been suers or fans of the courtroom. We've always tried to win in other ways, which in this instance we did. The solution in this instance was that, as Walt Disney said, a lot of people can copy us, but you can't copy as quickly as we can innovate. So that's when we kind of went on a big innovation binge. And we said, that's it. We are going to innovate faster than anyone else in the world does. We're going to come out with more products more quickly, and people will copy us along the way, but no one is going to copy us quickly enough to keep up with our innovation.
That's interesting. So in a way, that changed the formula for you in terms of how you're going to compete and how you're going to build the company. So it was, ironically, a serendipitous event.
It was. I can't say that we ever went back and said, thank you. But you're right. It did help shape us. And I would say that one of the things we have learned over the years, and this is true not just with us, but also with our children, and we would hope with others too, is that adversity is a necessary and an important developer and motivation. And so for us, we've had plenty of adversity over the years, and each time we run into something, the same thing happens. For a brief moment or so, you take a deep breath because it hits hard, and then you kind of look at each other and smile and say, this is great, because it's one more obstacle that we want to navigate through, and it's one more obstacle that perhaps one of our competitors won't be able to navigate through.
Well, character, I think, is often defined by how we respond to these moments of adversity, right? I mean, a lot of people would have just, called it quits and, moved on, and you sort of huddled together and fought back in your own way and lived to tell the tale.
If there is one thing that we would share that we've learned, it's that. And no street is easy. I mean, the number of people who come to us now and say, wow, everything must have gone right all along the way. It must have been smooth sailing. And we laugh. We say, we have had every single thing that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong. And the more important thing is that you catch your breath and you rethink it, find a workaround. Melissa and I sponsor a program at Duke University for entrepreneurial students who are wanting to start their own businesses, and we have a year-long program in which they actually do begin businesses with us and with our assistants and some other mentors. And one of the most common things that comes up in those discussions is, I failed and this went wrong. And we always say, that actually wasn't failure. That was actually the first part of success. You just have to look on the other side of it and see, where does it lead? What new door did it open? And I know that sounds like we're just trying to sugarcoat it, but in reality, it's really true. All the cliches are true. The door that closes does open another, and it's really about mindset. If you look at it and you look at an obstacle as something that will take you out of the game, then it will. But if you look at it as simply something that you have to figure out how to get around, then you will find a way.
So just to shift gears here, this day and age with all the things digital and electronic in our lives, your company still thrives. I believe, you can correct me otherwise, but I think it still thrives with the very basics, like wooden puzzles, blocks, and coloring pads, not all that dissimilar from how it started out 30 years ago. Are you philosophically opposed to digital media as entertainment for children, or is it more of a business decision, like maybe there's way too much competition in that other area, it's too hard to make money, and so you sort of stick with your knitting?
That's a great question, and it's an easy one to answer. It is all about philosophy and principle. And it goes back to the beginning. We did this not to be a successful business. We did this because we wanted to do what we thought was right for children. And that's what's driven it for 30 years. 5 years ago, we had many people coming to us saying, if you don't start putting apps into all your toys and introducing technology everywhere, then you will be bankrupt. And we said, bankruptcy, that could be fun. We haven't tried that yet. But more seriously, what we said is that we started this for a reason. We want to do the right things for children. We absolutely are strongly philosophically opposed to technology at that age. We understand technology's role in a business, and we understand technology's role for children at later points in their life. But for 3, 4, 5-year-olds, it's horrible. This week, this is very timely, earlier this week, the American Academy of Pediatrics, it's an amazing study they just released, and I read it again last night. They literally, and this is the leading authority on health and well-being for children, they came out this week with a study that said doctors, medical doctors, pediatricians should be prescribing something else for children, and it's called play. And they talked all about the subject, and they talked about the bombardment of technology in this young age. They talked about overscheduling children at this young age, and they talked about the importance for open-ended play, and they specifically said things like real building blocks, real shape sorters, not the digital variation. Later on, okay, go for it. But when your brain is developing at that young age, you need to be touching and playing with real toys. Do I feel strongly about it, by the way?
No, I think you're clearly a very values-driven company. It's almost like this trend to be that way, and I feel like it's more as much marketing hype as it is, real authentic values. But I think you all started that way day one, before there was really a business and a company, and you've stuck with it, and I applaud you for that.
Well, I appreciate that observation also. I do agree with you. I think that today you hear a lot of companies saying, let's engineer a mission for ourselves. Let's hire a third-party firm to come up with a mission and a value system because that's what everyone wants today. And with us, we are pleased to say that from day one, this is what we've done. We've stood by it. Others have suggested we go off track. We've said, no, we're going to do the right thing for children. That's going to be our guiding light. If we're rewarded for it, fine. If not, that's fine too.
You've also chosen to stay clear of licensing. And for a lot of the big companies, the big toy companies, licensing major brands is a huge driver of sales. So if movies or television shows have all this mass appeal, why not tap into that? I mean, keeping true to the types of toys that you provide and the kind of playtime that you want to provide, why not use that as a way of changing the trajectory?
That's a good question also. And I think that for us, we find that licenses supplant the integrity of the actual brand itself. And there are a lot of people, there was some surveys that were done not too long ago that said, what's the number one brand that gets requested in your store? This was asked of a lot of retailers, and it was Melissa & Doug. And I think that the point there is that we've wanted to develop our own brand identity and have our own brand stand for something, and not to have it driven by a borrowed identity that's only fleeting, that's out there for 3 months. The other thing is, from a business perspective, in that instance, frankly, I don't know that we would be good at that. That's not our specialty. Our specialty is not predicting trends and predicting which movie is going to be hot, which property is going to be hot, and getting into inventory and out of inventory quickly. Some of our best-selling items we've had for 10 or 15 years. So it's really a very different business model.
I read that you do very little advertising, maybe no advertising or PR. Is that still the case?
I would say until a couple of years ago, we literally did none. We let our products speak for themselves.
You built a several $100 million company off of word of mouth.
So we were at about $350 million before we spent a penny on marketing and on traditional forms of marketing. Our marketing that got it to that point was good old-fashioned word of mouth, people talking about it, us delivering great service, us being engaged with our customers, the old-fashioned way, which I would argue is the best form, always has been, always will be the strongest form of marketing. So yes, we got to about 350 million without spending anything. We do have a person and a team now that is putting their time and attention to disseminating our mission and our value system. So again, not traditional forms of marketing that one would expect, but really engaging with our consumer base and speaking with them about the importance of our products to free and open-ended play, how to use our products. So that would fall into the category generally of marketing, but we really consider it more mission and communication.
Well, you said earlier that you're really a product company at your core. So I'm curious to get a peek into the product development process. How do you come up with new ideas? How do you test them? How do you try to figure out the potential market with them? Can you give me a little slice of that part of the business?
Sure. And again, here, with apologies, we're not going to be a great example for many people because we do it kind of in a non-traditional way, as we do a lot of things.
But it's worked.
It has worked for us. So we actually don't do a lot of product testing. We believe that the best test for products really is having it in the marketplace. And it's amazing how many times, and I've seen this happen a lot, where you could take products to focus groups, or you could do, limited market tests and that type of thing. And it won't, there's not necessarily a high correlation between that and how it will be appreciated by consumers. The other thing is sometimes it takes a little while for something to catch on, for people to figure out, oh, I get it. So this is what you do with this product, especially since we're trying to do new and different and imaginative things. So really the process for us, it's really driven out of Melissa's group, and Melissa heads our product team, and she has some amazing people, amazing product people who work with her now. And they come up with ideas that normally, to your earlier point, are needs-based. They get a sense that there are children who enjoy something, but there's something about it that could be better. And that's usually where it begins, is how can we do something that's better, that doesn't exist in the market? And then we start to develop it and we put it out there.
If you had to venture a guess, roughly speaking, as to what percent of your products end up, not driving the company, but end up, successful from however you measure it, versus the ones where we tried, didn't work. What does that look like?
So it's interesting. There's a couple steps along that. The folks who work in our product group say, oh my gosh, I love this more than anything. I've never been at a place where everything we work on gets onto a shelf. So starting with that, we're very different than other companies in that pretty much almost everything we work on does make it to shelf. I would say we're in the mid 90 percentile for products that make it to shelf. Once it makes it to shelf, how many of those are still with us 2 years later, if that's how we want to define making it? I would say probably in the 75% range.
Oh, wow. That's a huge ratio.
It is.
That's interesting. So I guess that sets the bar very high. On the one hand, you've got to have some degree of risk taking because there's no certainties in life. On the other hand, if you're saying you've got a 75% rate as far as products making it onto and staying on the shelf, wow.
I think you're right. I think it is a high rate. And if I had to take a guess as to why that's different than other numbers in other places, it's because our product is really driven from what we assess as truly driven by things that we believe children will want, children will need. We spend a lot of time in preschools with children. Melissa is the ultimate in understanding what people want and what consumers want. She spends unlimited hours with our own children in ideating. And unlike other places, we're not coming up with things and saying, hey, we hope to impose this as a need or a desire upon people. Instead, it's the other way around. And I think that's why we probably have a higher rate, because we're not just saying this is something we think is good. Hopefully you will too. It's more the opposite. We usually go out there and say, this is something we know that you folks really want.
Well, there's got to also be, to some degree, a halo effect with the brand, right? Because after 3 decades, people must come to trust that if Melissa and Doug are putting this out there, then it must be fun, it must be educational, it must be good for development of my children.
I do think that's true. Our name certainly gets out there. We have north of 50 million children's products that go into homes every year at this point, which is a lot of products to go into homes. And I think that because we've stood behind our products also with quality over the years and great service, I do think that there is a high level of trust for our brand, and people who say, this is, something new from Melissa and Doug. I think it's worthy of trying with our children.
So think back over these 30 years.
Do I have to?
Give me the best example of a product that completely bombed. I mean, the biggest false positive that you've had where you thought it was going to be an absolute bestseller and it just went nowhere.
So we did an item about, I'd say it was probably 8, 9, 10 years ago. And we probably spent more time on this than anything else we've ever done. It was an interlocking puzzle world, and where you built everything. You built the cars, you built the buildings, you built the railway systems. Everything was built. And it was amazing. It was literally developed for several years, which most of our products aren't. And we took that to one of the large trade shows, and we had overwhelming response, maybe our best ever. We raced to development and we got it out into stores, and it came back slightly faster than it went out. And the reason, as we look back in retrospect, the product itself was conceived well, in our opinion, but what we overlooked was that when we were showing it at the trade shows and actually demonstrating it, it was very easy for consumers to understand what was going on. And when it was in a box within the stores, it was very hard to understand what was going on. So it was a classic case of a product that was well conceived, but we hadn't fully thought out all of the wrinkles as it comes to getting it out there.
Did it change the way you think about product delivery in the future? Like, did you use that learning to preempt that kind of mistake for future products that you release?
We did. To a certain extent, we made sure that our products would also speak easily and well to consumers when only on a shelf and not with someone there to actually demonstrate it at all times. And the other thing is that the other change that's occurred is what's it called again? Oh yeah, e-com. And e-com became a pretty big thing, and e-com can do an amazing job of presenting products. And you could have videos presenting products and things like that. So we did realize that there are some products we're going to make that are probably better suited to an e-com environment.
So what's been the toughest part about scaling the organization? Before you answer it, how many employees do you have today?
So we have, and that answers your first question, by the way. What's the toughest part of scaling? So we have, about 800, worldwide at this point. Okay. And I would say that certainly as we've grown, I would say that is the hardest part about scaling. The hardest part about scaling is finding all the amazing people that you need to continue growing. And, at the beginning, it was a lot easier. We need one more person, and that was easy. But finding people that will appreciate what we're doing, we try to have a litmus test on the way in, which is it's not only amazing skills, because you need all the amazing skills, but we also like to attract people who work well with each other, play well together in the sandbox, collaborate well together. And as one of our awesome advisors and board members, John Replogle, has said, he has a lot of experience in mission-based companies. And as he said, and I agree, everyone that we bring in has to be a strong believer in what we stand for, has to really believe that we're doing something important for the world, has to believe and be passionate about our mission and what we stand for. So that's an important thing that we like in everyone we bring in also.
Well, you've got to have the right people, as you point out, both subscribing to the mission as well as the right skill set and talents and motivation. But the toughest task entrepreneurs typically have is when they start to grow, actually empowering those people, letting go, delegating, pushing down responsibility and authority. Has that been a difficult transition for you?
It's definitely a transition. It's one that both Melissa and I embrace, and it is absolutely, especially when you have a founder-led company, it's even more so that way. Because it wasn't that long ago that it was a couple of us at a kitchen table doing this. So you're right. As things change, you start to release things, and not only release, but also empower. So absolutely transitional. I wouldn't hide from that fact. It is absolutely something that has to be done by intent and by design, not by accident, because it won't just happen. So for that to happen, it goes back to the people thing. It's really important to bring in people that you trust will carry on the things that were most important. And they can't carry on everything that you've done. That's impossible. But you do have to have a few core tenets that you want to carry on and perpetuate forever.
Would you say that your leadership style has evolved from, say, maybe back when you had 20, 30, 40 people to now where you have 800?
Absolutely. Still evolving. Work in progress. I'm the biggest work in progress here. You have to evolve your style all the time. And it depends on what your goal is. Some people want to just, hang on with that stranglehold forever. We don't want to. One of our other goals at the very beginning when we started doing this was, and we talk about this often, the word accessible. And to us, accessible means that we think what we're doing is so important, we want it to be available to children everywhere. To do that, we do need to continue to grow. We need to be able to continue to get our product into the hands of more children. And to do that, we do have to empower more people, because we can't do it all going forward. So it's consistent with our goal, and we just have to evolve our styles to allow that to happen.
And do you have a coach or a mentor or someone that's helped you with your own style?
I do. I've worked with a couple of people who helped me with that. But I also think at the end of the day, I think you have to really go through this, I think you have to have extraordinary self-awareness. And I am absolutely my best critic. I have a notepad with me at all times, and in the middle of the night, I scribble myself lists of all the things I did wrong today. And you really have to, if you want to improve, you have to be self-aware. And I'll use your coaching analogy. And a couple of our sons have played baseball, and you can have them have coaching assistance all the time in terms of having a great swing for baseball. So you could be a great hitter. But at the end of the day, when it's your at bat and it's just you and it's just the pitcher, you have to, from your inside, be able to see what just happened, to see what the pitcher just threw, to see why that last swing didn't work well, and to adjust that swing to have more success on the next swing. And the same is true of being an executive. When you're in the moment and in the spot, you've had all the coaching, you've had all the mentoring, you've had all the advising. You have to pause. You have to catch your breath. You have to step out of yourself. You have to be self-aware, and you have to adjust.
Well, I know you sold part of the company to a private equity investor some years back, but I'm assuming there must have been opportunities to sell the company outright to one of the larger toy companies once or twice or maybe multiple times over the course of the journey here. So I'm assuming you just must running the company that much that you didn't want to go that path, or were there moments where you truly considered it?
You're right in everything you just said. All points are correct. Many opportunities to do that, and have always said graciously, although maybe not so graciously, that no, it does come back again to our mission, and we don't view this as simply as a business. It's too important to us that it continue to have some of the key tenets that we've stood for, that drove it at the beginning. And so for that reason, it's made the most sense to keep it independently the way it is.
You said you're extremely self-aware. So what's your superpower, and what would be your kryptonite?
One of the few things that I could do well is I think I can read situations well. I think I have good visibility. I think I can see what's coming down the road. And I think that I have a good antenna as it regards situations, where things are heading, large pictures, and also people. I empathize a lot with people and can really, understand when things are working well and when things are not working as well. So I think that's some of the somewhat non-quantifiable qualities that I bring to it. You definitely want to keep me far away from the product, as Melissa chooses to do all the time. I think my creative decisions, as even the way I dress would attest, would tell you that I'm not the one to be asking about colors or coordinating things or putting together things well aesthetically. I certainly don't do well in that category.
Fair enough. I read that there was once a Jeopardy question about you. Is that true?
Actually, I think it's twice now.
Twice now.
Yeah, this is bad stuff though. This is what propels us to know that we still have work ahead of us, because the question on Jeopardy was something along the lines of, this toy company that has become the largest maker of wooden toys is called Melissa and they guessed all sorts of names, but Doug. So that's when we said, all right, we still have work to do.
No one got it.
No one got the Doug.
Wow.
Even people at our own company probably didn't even get it. I was yelling. I knew it. I was saying it's Doug. But that was also a good moment for us. And it said, okay, we have work to do still.
You started a movement called Take Back Childhood. What is that movement all about?
So that goes back really to the American Academy of Pediatrics statement, and that's not the only statement. If you go back the last few years, you will see, and we have in our office, and you could find it online as well. In fact, I believe it's on our website, but thousands, not just a few, but thousands of studies, thousands of reports, thousands of documents and learnings coming out of the academic community, the medical community, psychologists, caregivers, parents over the last few years that are talking about the fact that childhood has changed so much for children. And it's not just about wanting children to play with our toys. In fact, we don't usually talk about that. It's about doing things like that we like to do with our children and going outside into your yard. Melissa, with our son Nate, loves nothing more as we get to fall season to go into the front yard, sit under the trees, wait for leaves to fall, run around, try to catch them before they touch the ground. The other night, we're outside in our driveway and with a couple of our kids, and we had set up some little markers in the driveway, and we're seeing if we could ride around on bicycles and how many of the little markers we could touch with the front tire. So the idea is to return to play, to move a little bit away from the overscheduled, the performance-related activities that are taking over, the children who are spending way too much time on social media, way too much time becoming depressed and or anxious by seeing all the wonderful lives that everyone on social media is leading but themselves. So all of that has really changed childhood a lot from when I was a child, which was probably when we played with dinosaur bones. It was a while ago.
Right.
But it's a different form of childhood that we think, and others would say so also, has been disappearing a little bit for children today.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that. Doug, you've built this amazing company. It's always been validated, I guess, by millions of consumers that play with the toys. But then certainly having the private equity firm come in and take a large stake was even further validation. You've built the number one company in this category. It's an incredible run. It's been 3 decades. At this stage of your life, when obviously you don't have to work anymore, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated?
So it's another interesting question, and I suppose it's that validation that has re-inspired us. It was only in the last couple of years when a lot of these studies started coming out, and we started seeing a lot of reports, and we started seeing a lot of data, and frankly, a lot of it was saying, when questions were asked, which brand do you trust the most? Which brand do you want to see move into these other categories? Which brand do you want to see your children spend more time with? I think when we started seeing our name showing up at the tops of the list of so many of those questions, I think Melissa and I realized that all of the work that has been put into it to get to this point has made it so that we feel even a greater responsibility now. We almost view it as a responsibility of ours to see this through in a bigger way, and we think we have a greater opportunity to positively impact children, which is where it all began. So I think if we were to slow down at this point, I think we would be horribly disappointed in ourselves. We would consider all of this to have been a miserable failure because we got it to the point where we can first really truly be impacting lives the way we have always wanted to. So that's the part that we really have to see through now.
Is it still fun for you?
We love it. It's more fun every day. I love working with Melissa. It's a gift every day to spend that much time with her. We have amazing people we work with. And the letters that we get, and so many of them come directly to me. My email address is out there, and I read every single one of them, and we share them, and we all talk about, and we all say it's a reminder of why we do what we do. And every single time I read one of those letters, and got one late last night that I read from a mother it was actually a grandmother and her autistic grandchild, and saying how much we've changed the life for her grandson and how important we've been to her. And she just wanted to take the time to let us know what our products have meant to her and her grandson. When we get that makes it pretty easy to come in the next day.
So the name of this podcast is The Art of Excellence. Curious to hear what your definition of excellence is.
That's great. Well, congratulations to you for your awesome podcast, and thank you for what you do and sharing stories with people. I think that's amazing, and you do it in a really authentic manner, and we appreciate that a lot.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you to you. And I would say excellence, the way that we would define it, is always bringing your very best to what you do, and always having the inner pride to do things the very best way. We were speaking with a woman about this yesterday. It was actually a conversation about compensation, and she's an expert on benefits and that type of thing. And we were saying that we're the types of people, and we love to be around others who are inspired from what's in. And I'm the type of person and Melissa and everyone here at our place is that if we were receiving no compensation for this, we would be bringing just as much energy and effort to it. If we were receiving double the compensation, it wouldn't go up at all. We're bringing it all. We're bringing our very best to every single thing that we do. We're not sacrificing. We're not cutting corners. We're not taking shortcuts. We're making sure that everything we leave, we leave it with pride that we've brought our very best to it.
Brilliant answer. Thank you. You and your wife, Melissa, I applaud what you've done here. I mean, it's one thing to start day one with certain values, but as you build a company over many, many years and the idea and the concept becomes more of a company to stick with those values and stay true to your mission. And you've been able to do that. Not a lot of people, not a lot of companies do. It's been a real honor to hear the story and learn what you're doing out there, not just building a company, but helping to shape lives of our children. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being part of the show. I really enjoyed it, Doug.
And thanks. And I really did also. And I want to echo what I said a moment ago in my compliments back to you. You have an amazing gift to be able to take away from conversations and from people what the most important nuggets are. I've time and again during this conversation, I've said, wow, boy, really understands. And you just hit upon another one there. It is. You're absolutely right. It's easy to have a mission and a belief at the beginning, but life is full of temptations. And the important thing is if you really believe in it, if you're really doing it for the right reasons, you need to have the strength to avoid those temptations because they will take you off course. And before you know it, you'll wake up one day and you will say, that's not who I had wanted to be. And so you captured much better than I ever could communicate it. So thank you.
Well, appreciate it. Nice to meet you and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. You can subscribe to the show at iTunes, Stitcher, and theartofexcellence.com. I've got one small favor to ask. If you like the show, please take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate that. I'll see you next time.